Good morning to Madam Hanum. Today we are from the Simplicity Group. We'll present our mini project titled Volunteer Traveling Allowance Calculator. So here are the group members. Macaurel is the leader, and the second member is me, Chaessler, and the third member is Zulaika, and the last member is Lim. The first one is the problem statement. A company is having trouble with calculating the amount of allowance to be given to the volunteers based on their travel distances, as it is consuming too much time. The company has asked us to build a calculator and to record the output so they can track the amount of expenditure. The travel distance rates are as the following. For the first 500 km, the rate will be 50 cents per kilometer, and for the next 500 km, the rate will be 45 cents per kilometer, and for the next 700 km, the rate will be 40 cents per kilometer, and for the remaining kilometers, the rate will be 35 cents per kilometer. The next one is objectives. We have three objectives altogether. So the first one is to build a user-friendly program so that the user can easily adapt to the program. And the second one is to make sure user can manage their finance accordingly and to ensure that they don't spend more than necessary. And the last one is to build a forgiving program that will save the output into a TXT file or text file that can be opened by a notepad if accidents happen, such as accidental close or power outage.
Hello, my name is Macaurel, and I'll be continuing this part of the presentation, which is analysis. In analysis, what we want to do is we want to analyze the problem and create an IPO table to solve the problem. So starting from the left, we have input. And in this input section, we will ask the user for the number of groups, the number of volunteers in a group, distance traveled by volunteers, and a response to whether user wants to see a more personalized sheet or not. So in the process part of this problem is we will create a formula to calculate the allowance of a volunteer according to the distance traveled by the volunteer. And we also create a formula to total up the amount of allowance per group and also to total up the amount of allowance that will be spent overall. And in the output section, we have the total allowance, meaning that we will print out total allowance out, the allowance per group, and the allowance per volunteer if the user wanted to see a more personalized sheet of the expenditure. And finally we have text file. This is just to create a soft copy for the user so they can save it for themselves. Alright, so moving on into the flowchart part of the program. So we're going to start with the main flowchart, which is main, and first we initialize x as 0 and y as 0, and after that we're going to read the number of groups and also the number of volunteer in one group. And simply after that we'll call in the function display rates to simply display the rates of conversion from distance to money. And we have two conditions here, which is x less than group number and also y less than volunteer number. Now this is simply as a condition of loop, meaning that this thing will run until the condition is met and ends the loop here. So these two loops is actually just used for entering the number of volunteer in a group. So this will enter respectively, and it will also calculate the total allowance and also the overall expenditure inside this one loop. And also this is where the function calculate allowance is done. After that, we'll move on to display expenditure on the left, and after we call in the function display expenditure, it will read the response of the user whether they want to see a more personalized version of the volunteer expenditure sheet. So if the response is not y or n, it will display an error and ask the user to enter the response again. If the response is y or n, it will go down and check the second condition, which is response y. So if response y is checked and it is the response is equal to y, it will display personalized, which is a function to display a more personalized version of the sheet and put it all into a text file and output the .txt file. And if the response is not y, it will simply go down to the .txt file and end the program there. So we're going to move on to our functions, which are calculate allowance, which is to simply calculate and return the value of allowance according to the distance in the rate. So the second function here is display rates. This is simply just to print out the rates, and that's it. And now we're going to move on to display expenditure. So display expenditure is also the same with display rates as before, except that this one will be more specifically tailored to each group's expenditure, and also display the overall expenditure of the whole money. So, and then this here will ask the user if they want to see a more detailed version of the sheet, and it will end the program there and continue it in the main program. So the fourth one, which is display personalized, that one is just simply two loops to display all the volunteers calculated allowance that will be put in.
Hi, I'm Lim, and now I will present about the pseudocode of our project. First, we will come to the main code of our project. We will first get the input of group number and also volunteer number. And for x equal to 0, x smaller than group number, we will print out group x plus 1. And after that, we will get the group expenditure x and overall expenditure by using calculation. After that, we will call a function of display expenditure we will introduce later on. And then we will get the input data response and come to a switch for y we will call display personalized. For n we will break, and for default we will, if the response is not equal to y and not equal to n, we'll print out wrong input and enter response, and then we'll get the input data response again. And then we'll open total allowance text as output stream, and for x equal to 0, x smaller than group number, we'll call out group and x plus 1 as output stream. And then we'll print out the volunteer y plus 1 and also allowance rm and volunteer xy. And then the total group rm and also group expenditure will be printed out too. And then we'll print out total allowance is equal to rm and overall expenditure. And then we'll finally close the allowance file text. And then we will set the string overall and open the total allowance text at input stream. And then input overall into total allowance text. And then the main code is end. After that, we will come to pseudocode of our function. First, the calculate allowance. This function will calculate the total allowance by using the simple calculation. And this function is just display the rates that we'll calculate just now. And the display expenditure function will take the value of total group number from main program and create a loop to print out the total group expenditure. And then we will print out the overall expenditure that will be spent and ask user if they want to see more specified version of allowance sheet. And lastly, the function of display personalized. We will create a loop to print individual allowance of all volunteers according to their group and total allowance from each groups. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, so now as for the demo, I will try to run the program and show you how to use it. So first you need to locate your program. As for me, the program is in this folder. So as mentioned before, this program is able to print out the output into a notepad named total allowance. So now I will try to run the program. So the inputs here are pretty straightforward, so I will just go through this really quickly. So as you can see, these are the outputs, and if you go back into the folder where the program is located, the total allowance notepad file is created, and as you can see, the outputs are copied into the notepad. So that's all. Thanks.